Let's first start off with the mower, specifically the mower deck. Unless you're trying to create a golf course, raise the deck to one of the highest settings. I put it on the third from the highest. I made the mistake the last couple of years of cutting my yard really short, which did not help at all. It had a lot of bare spots, which still does have some bare spots, but growing it taller has filled it in quite a bit. You can see how some of the patches of grass are growing out, and it helps to cover up the bare spots. This is one of the better examples in the yard where there's still a bare spot here, but all the grass around it is just overlapping to fill it in and make it look like grass is growing everywhere. Tip number 2 is still about the deck, but let's talk about the blades. First, the grass blades. If your yard has an overall brown look along the top of the grass, you may need to sharpen your blades. This would be an example of a dull blade possibly ripping off more of the grass than cutting it. Obviously, you can take blades somewhere to be sharpened, but the best no-cost way is to use your own angle grinder. Now, using an angle grinder freehand does work, but as you can see here, this was not previously done free-handed. That is because I use a grinder-assisted arm. This arm keeps the grinder in the same position back and forth so you get a nice, even, grinded angle. Check out the video linked below to see more about it. Sharpened blades may not seem like a big deal, but when you're mowing, you can definitely tell a difference in what it looks like. The next thing is a major pet peeve of mine, and where I live in the Midwest, it's pretty prevalent in the area. Tip number 3 is when you mow, especially along the roadside, make sure that the chute is faced in towards the yard. I'm not sure why people shoot the grass blades out into the road. For one, it is definitely dangerous for like motorcycles, but another, it just doesn't look good. And if you are planning on blowing it off the road, why not just save you the work and not shoot it out onto the road? Now, I'm not just crazy in thinking this because there are some states that actually have laws against it. Next thing up is a tip on weed eating. For starters, in most situations, it would look better for you to use the weed eater and keep an even cut with where you mowed. So just try to keep that weed eater head level along the edge of the grass to make it a seamless transition from where you mowed to the edge. Now, one major tip that I learned that is very helpful when I worked landscaping in Florida is walking parallel to your weed eating edge. Now, the way I just did it there is a more inconvenient way because you're crisscrossing over each foot and making a less stable walk and also not looking in the direction you're walking. And some people even do it backwards. But to me, the best thing, easiest way to mow around all your edges is walking forward parallel along the edge and keeping the right distance away for the length of your weed eater and then just looking over, because then you have peripheral view in front of you so you can see where you're going, and it's also an easier way to walk. Now, some round areas like a small tree you wouldn't have to walk parallel to and you can just reach around the whole thing. But if it was a larger tree, you would want to use the same pattern and walk parallel to the circumference of that tree. For some edges, you may need to raise the weed eater, so just lift that trigger hand up a little farther to lift the rear end of that weed eater to give it that beveled edge that you need. Now, the next thing most people don't do but really takes your yard up a notch is edging. And I don't have an edger, so it's flipping the weed eater upside down. And depending on your weed eater and the way the handle is situated, you just kind of have to play around with it and figure out the best way to hold it. And I use my thumb for the trigger. And basically what you're trying to do is keep a nice dirt line separating between whatever edge you're at and the grass. And while I do this, I'm also giving a slight turn to the weed eater head. Now, edging is not exactly a necessary step for you to do in your yard landscaping, but to me, it's that one thing that really kicks it up a notch and gives all your edges a really sharp, clean look and just sets your yard up just to a higher looking standard. I also do this along the road, and some yards will have a better edge along the road than mine is. And lastly, I also edge the grass along our driveway. Now, the next thing is using a blower, and some people will do the blower and not edging, but if they aren't using the blower, then they definitely aren't edging. So you can use the same principle as weed eating as you can with the blower, and that is walking parallel along the edge and blowing in towards the grass. And this is just another one of the small little steps you can do to take your yard up a notch in cleanliness and looking really good when you do your landscaping. And one little extra step you could do with the blower is blowing out those edging spaces that you made if they have leaves and grass clippings in them, just to clean them up a little bit.